I was very fortunate in my career. I spent the bulk of my career in the private sector, and it wasn't really until I had left the private sector that I got a call from the governor, newly elected governor in Michigan, who actually asked me to come in and take the CIO role for Michigan. That was a challenge because I hadn't really worked in government before, hadn't really thought about working in government before. And I think it was really an understanding of a couple of things. First of all, public service is unlike any other job that you could have. And as I've said to people, it's actually not a job, it's actually not a career. It's actually a part of who people are. And I think the realization of that has made my opportunity in working in government really a gift. One of the things that I did very early on was to go out and get advice. I had never been in the public sector before, and I was lucky that I had individuals from all different areas, not necessarily just from being a CIO, but what I tried to do is to get advice on, what did it mean to work in government? How did that actually work? I actually also sought advice not only from inside government, but I actually used industry. I actually went out to companies, technology companies that did business with government and asked them about how did it work, what were the dynamics of it. And I think some of the most important things I learned was just the relationship between having the media, which you don't have in the private sector, dealing with Congress or the legislature at a state perspective that gave you the money, dealing with your peer group, dealing with the governor's office, and then dealing with the governor's staff, which aren't necessarily always the same thing. And getting advice on how those 5 groups actually influenced what you were trying to do was really invaluable for me. First of all, I think for new employees coming in, it can be daunting to be in large institutions. But I will quote something actually from Secretary Panetta just before he left. One of the pieces of advice that he gave us, which I think is so true, is that to be successful really requires diligence and patience and persistence. If in fact you have a view of things that you feel need to be done, don't be discouraged by one meeting or one group or one individual that may not feel that that is the right approach. Sometimes it's a question of being able to match what you believe is a good idea with the opportunity to present that idea. Let me give you an example of that. One of them is the mobility strategy that we just talked about. We've been working on that mobility strategy for some time. And we were pushing it forward. We were getting quite a bit of good press on it, but we didn't really have the kind of oomph that we needed behind it until we were able to present it to General Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who became very interested in what we were doing, and that just changed the dynamic. So sometimes you just gotta be ready with your idea when it really is the time that your senior management is going to be interested and ready to take that. The best career advice that I ever received was not to constrain yourself. I was lucky. I had a boss that once said to me, actually called me aside and said, "Teri, how come you're not speaking up in meetings? Why is it that you're not coming forward with your ideas?" And he said to me, people in the room know you, and they know you have something to say, and they're waiting for you to say it, and you're not. And I realized that I was holding back because I was afraid that my ideas weren't going to be accepted. And I think sometimes we create our own constraints because we're worried about the way we're going to be perceived. And sometimes we have to overcome that and make sure that others understand what we have to offer, and then not be daunted again by the fact that someone in the room may not like that particular idea. It doesn't mean that we as an individual still aren't a very important contributor and a very important part of whatever organization that we're in. One of the things I think that I always feel is important in furthering your career is to observe three groups of people. First of all, to observe the folks that you work for, whether you call them your supervisor, your manager. And when I say to people observe those, I think it's a question of not only what do you like, but what don't you like, to shape yourself. And then not to be afraid to approach individuals and be willing to ask questions. People are willing to talk about what they do and why they do it. The second is to observe your peer group. Your peer group is in many ways your competition. So what do they do well? What do they not do well? Who do you partner with? And how do you find out and actually be able to further your ideas, not by yourself, but by joining with the group? And sometimes they may be people that are your competition, but you still want to be able to join with them. And lastly is, if you get in a position of being in a supervisory spot, to listen to the people that work for you. You know, in a mentoring situation, I had someone actually ask me, and quite frankly it took me a minute to think of the answer, why I did mentoring, because I've been active in a lot of mentoring programs. And when I stepped back to think about it, I realized it was because I learned as much about myself in a mentoring situation as I was ever able to contribute to the person that I was mentoring. Because the questions those individuals would ask of me made me think about why did I do certain things the way I did, and gave me a chance to reflect and to get better. Well, I think working for government has a number of really important benefits. I think first of all, again, I think the ability to work for what I believe is a greater cause. Whether you choose a federal department, whether you choose state government, whether you choose a nonprofit organization or any local government, it's about having the ability to give back and the ability to have an impact that's on a broader scale than yourself. Working for a company is great. You learn a lot, you have a lot of opportunity, but it's not that same ability to give back. The second is that working in government gives you an opportunity to really see how you can move your ideas. And it's a great opportunity from a perspective standpoint to be able to see that. Thirdly, I would have to say I've worked with just outstanding individuals. And that's not to say that you don't in the private sector, but you work with folks that have objectives, ideals for things that they want to accomplish. So I think, number one, it's great if you want to continue to have a career in government. It gives you that opportunity. I think, secondly, it is an ability to understand government and a great launching pad, whether you go into a nonprofit organization after that or you choose to go into a commercial sector that works with government. The thing I think that's important is that a government job doesn't mean you're always going to be government. I mean, many folks that I know work in a government job, move out and work in commercial industry, and then very often come back to government. So I think it's a way of thinking about it, not just as it's a job, but more its placement in the overall experience that you have as an individual.